Hey, my name's Robin with Trust Roofing, and this is the Trust Business Podcast. Today I have a very special guest. Her name is Erin Leese. She's the owner and CEO of SunForge Energy, a solar company startup here in Tampa Bay. She is awesome. She's a mom. She owns her own business. She is incredible. I'm very happy to have her. If you guys like the content, like, comment, subscribe, and let us know. And thank you so much for checking it out. Okay, good. Hey, Erin, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good to see you. Okay, so thank you so much for being on. It's an honor. It's awesome. We work together a lot. Just to start off, so how did you get into solar?
I actually got into solar when I was looking into it for my own home and kind of was curious about it. I lived in Michigan at the time, and I was like, this doesn't work in Michigan. Well, it turned out it did. And, I was interested in it and realized, that it was something that, an area one could work in. So I was kind of looking for a change at the time anyways. And so I got into it that way. So my reasons for it were just true, genuine interest in the industry. And then, once I did get into it, it kind of opened up this big can of worms of understanding the corruption of the utility companies, both in Michigan and around the country. They're all different, but they're all the same kind of in a lot of ways. So,
why would it be that it wouldn't work at good Michigan? Just cloud coverage?
Well, it's a lot. There's a lot more clouds. It's further north. There's snow, so there's a lot more. I guess, variables in Michigan than here in Florida. So, but it does actually work really well there because it's all a matter of dollars and cents, and we're paying 17 cents a kilowatt hour here, and they're paying 22-ish.
Why is it so much higher?
That's a good question. I don't know. Honestly, I'm not totally sure, but like places in California are at like 64 cents. So
wow. Yeah. That makes sense that makes sense why solar would be huge over there.
Yeah. Totally.
Okay, cool. What were you doing before you got into solar?
I actually coached gymnastics for 20 years.
You did? Yeah. I did not know that about you. That's cool.
I did.
Like high school or like
no,
teams?
I coached elites. I had college athletes and even an Olympian and world champion at one point in Michigan.
So then you're like a good gymnast yourself?
I was an okay gymnast. I was a much better coach than I was a gymnast.
Wow. That is so cool. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Okay, so you're in Michigan, you got into solar. So then when you got into solar, what was your first role? Like, how did you start off?
I started off basically as a sales rep, and I had never been in any kind of sales role in my life before that. So I really didn't know what I was getting into. I was totally new.
Wow.
And I was a homeowner. I'd already owned several homes in Michigan before that point, and I very quickly started seeing the ugly side of the sales profession. People telling lies and also being poorly trained, because solar is a very scientific subject, and it is something that works when it's installed correctly and when it's sized correctly for the house. And there's a lot of things that if a consultant or sales rep doesn't know, that then they pass on wrong information to the homeowner, and then you have an unhappy person, right?
Got it. All right, so you had never been in sales before. You started off into sales, and then the training you said wasn't the greatest when you kind of got going. Okay.
Right.
So that's in Michigan. So then how does that kind of segue to you ending up over here and being over here and in solar?
Yeah. I started my company in Michigan, but
same name?
No. The name it's fresh to Florida. But I started it in Michigan. I was kind of, the reason I started it was because I was searching for a company that I could trust to work for and that would, provide me the support I needed and also support to the homeowner, most importantly to the homeowner, and looked like they had integrity and basically just did what they said they were worthy of trust, right? And I couldn't find one. So I was like, I can't be in this industry, and I can't ask a homeowner to make a commitment like this if I can't make sure all the boxes are checked for them and make sure that they're going to have a good experience and be taken care of. So that's why I created my own company, and it's definitely not the easy route, but I think it's the only way that I can do it. And I have nothing but nothing but happy customers, and it's it makes it worth it for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's very cool. All right, so you're kind of in this, you're selling, and you see like a little bit, you're like, I don't feel like maybe the industry as a whole, the people you're working for are taking as good care of these customers as you want to. So you're like,
Right.
okay, good. I'm going to go do my own thing because that way I know. I really like that. That's similar to me, just wanting to, if you own it, if it's yours at the end of the day, no matter what, it's always your responsibility.
Right.
And then you can
Right.
ensure it's to the standard that you want, or at least you're in a better position to than if you're just working for somebody else.
And
so.
as you know, in constructions, there's all kinds of things that pop up, and no one's perfect. But, if you know that you're working with good people, then you know that at least the issue will get taken care of. And,
Sure.
if there is ever an issue that comes up.
Sure. Okay, cool. So then now you're here in Florida. So then when did you start SunForge Energy? How long has that brand and that company been around for?
Yeah, we've been in Florida for a couple of years. So I started the SunForge Energy brand shortly after that. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, so we're fairly new. But last year we won Best of the Bay for the area.
I saw that. That was amazing. And I saw that you were very persistent on your personal social media, just boom, 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 putting it there. And you won it. I thought that was incredible because, not that you guys are small. I mean, you're a good company and everything, but there's a lot of competition in solar, though.
We are small compared to who we were up against, for sure. There were companies 10 times our size on that list.
Trying to win, right?
Yeah. So first we had to be in the top 10 nominated companies. And then, after that, we had to win the popular vote.
It's so impressive that you won. I have a question for you. I've always been curious because I've never like my company, Trust Roofing, we've never really won one of those. I've never personally like really pushed to try to win one much. After winning it, like, did you see a tangible like result in terms of influx of business, or even just using that saying, hey, we won Best of the Bay? Like, did that help your brand, would you say?
I mean, I think it can't help but help a little bit. I don't know that it actually made the phone ring more.
Right.
But it still shows that we're not necessarily like a fly-by-night company. There's a lot of those in solar, probably roofing as well. So
I would say there are a lot in roofing, but I would agree that the solar industry is even more prominent. So with just some new guy 1099 and selling another guy, then they're selling him. This is actually interesting. I didn't like watch the whole article or learn about it and everything, but there was $100 million solar company in California that just went out of business, filed, or I don't know if they're going out of business, but they're filing bankruptcy is what I saw. I think it was a Chapter 7 bankruptcy filing. And then you see that and you're just like, $100 million company, filing Chapter 7. I mean, there has to be a lot of mismanagement in the scaling to get there.
You're exactly right, yeah.
What's your thought process in terms of that, and just in terms of, I don't know, just in terms of the industry in general and that kind of, because I look at solar and one of the things, if I were a consumer going into it, I would be worried because of that state of the industry and how new it is, how many companies there are, how many options there are, how much info there is. I would be worried if I were a consumer doing it just because of that factor.
Yeah, it's hard to even do accurate research online as a consumer because every different market around the country is so wildly different, and the utility companies are all different. They all have regulations that are unique to them. So having, I specifically target locations where I know the market very well because I know the advice I can give to homeowners is going to be accurate. And
right, so, like if the power company is X or in this area, then you might be able to give advice, whereas in an area you might not know as well, you might not be able to.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing like in our industry in roofing, because I was talking on my last podcast, if you're right on the water, the wind speeds might be such, there's special preparation, special techniques, or let's say there's a 9-story building. I mean, that requires special talent, requires special like liability insurance coverages, workers' comp coverages, requires special equipment, like, and kind of knowing your limits of what you know and what you don't know.
Yeah.
So
right. And to answer your question about the big company going out of business, I mean, I don't know who that was, but I do have clients in California. That's one of the states that we service most recently.
Oh, wow.
And there have been a lot of companies going out of business there from mismanagement, and mostly it's a hazard of the solar industry because projects sometimes don't get paid out for 3-4 months because of permitting and all that. So a lot of companies were paying too much. Were paying too much towards equipment. They were fronting all the equipment costs, and then having to wait so long. So it's basically a cash flow problem that just became so big because these are expensive projects.
Right, you're putting out all up front to do it, and then maybe you're not getting paid in the financing, or it's taking too long, or whatever, and then you're kind of in trouble. Or maybe you're not margining enough, and you don't have enough to make up for that.
Yeah, and also some were trying to pay sales teams in the beginning, like an upfront. Yeah. And then, you know, it
that
seems
can
like
create issues. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a good problem to have 100 salespeople all selling a bunch of projects, but then if you have to pay them a certain amount on each project before anything comes in, that's a big deal. So
yeah, that's a good point. That's something that we do is, I mean, we pay our sales team when the check comes in. We pay them when the job is completed and the money is there. Now, if it's a big job and it's half up front or, you know, whatever, then of course we might do a percentage of it beforehand. But for the most part, we just do it at the end. And what that does is A, that prevents as much of that cash flow issue that you just brought up.
Right.
But then B, it holds your salespeople and holds those commission-based sales reps to the accountability of like, hey, your job isn't just to sell this project.
Right.
Your job is to sell a good, a profitable project and set the expectations, set everything up relationship-wise so that the company can succeed and then ensure that it does succeed. Like my sales reps don't go and manage the projects and like be there every step of the way, but they are expected to like, hey, if there's something that goes on that has to do with the relationship, has to do with an expectation that may or may not have been set, like something like this, there's a question, then they're supposed to jump in there and deal with that.
Yeah.
And of course they get paid when it's done. So no,
Absolutely.
I agree with that. Okay, cool. So mismanagement there and stuff like that. So then you being a smaller company in the smaller end, like what are you doing to differentiate yourself in the space or to feel like, you know, you can provide homeowners with that trust factor in that? Because that is the big concern. There's so many companies, so much shopping that one could do in the solar market.
Yeah.
What do you do to differentiate or whatever in your company?
Yeah, honestly, I'm very different than anyone I've really met in solar. I have a whole list of things that I tell clients every single time that most solar companies don't talk about intentionally, you know. And that was one thing that I first saw in Michigan with the very first company I worked for was that, you know, we were trained in a certain way. It was basically just sales training, bullet points of why is solar cool and good and, you know, why should someone do it? But it was not the data that you need to actually give good advice and understand someone's situation and whatever. So, I mean, I have a very small sales team. I'd like it to be bigger eventually, but
how many people do you have who are selling for you?
Like 4 or 5 people, but it's some.
That's not that small. I mean,
a few of them are part-time.
Okay.
But yeah, we're small, and honestly, like I don't recruit. People usually come to me, and
I'm the same way.
And I just am so picky about who I hire, and also. Our training process is so different. I have such higher expectations because I train them as solar pros. I don't send a salesperson out. I train them to do things how I do it, and if they're unable to make that work, then that's fine. But basically what sets us apart is honestly being truthful and being very thorough and educational. And by the time I've done a full consultation with someone, it either makes sense or it doesn't, but no matter what, they're not going to get scammed by some other company.
I like that you just said that. The last thing you said, it either makes sense or it doesn't. The reason I like that is because in solar, one thing that I see a lot of talk about and a lot of like, you know, whatever is like, hey, a lot of times it doesn't even make sense. Like it doesn't even make sense financially. And people look at it. And sometimes when you do the numbers for certain homes, certain homeowners, it just doesn't make sense. It's one of these technologies that's kind of evolving. So it's constantly getting better, constantly improving. So what do you say to that concern? Because it's definitely out there in the market of like, does it make sense or not? And like, you know, why would you do it financially? And now you have this big, if you're doing it off financing, obviously, now you have this big financing thing. It's going to hit your credit. And like, is it worth it? Like, what would you say to that kind of thought process that's out there?
Right. Well, I mean, basically, there's so many situations. So if you have a sales rep that's like basically got themselves believing that everyone should go solar and it's a great thing no matter who you are, and even if you're going to sell the house in a year.
And I've heard those exact words before. I've heard someone call me about solar. and I'm like, you know, I'm in Odessa. My house is completely covered by trees. Like, I don't think you'd be able to offset what you would need to. And literally their response was, oh, you know, their kind of attitude was, oh yeah, well, I think everyone should go solar. Blah, 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 blah. I'm just like, so anyway.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've heard it all. Don't even I won't get on my soapbox too much, but
Yeah. No, I want to hear about you and what you do different on that.
Yeah. So no, I mean, a lot of the times you'll hear people say like, oh, don't worry if you're going to sell the home next year, it's going to raise the value of your home, Like they justify it for you with things that don't make sense. Because while solar should raise the value a certain extent, we don't know. That depends on the appraiser. It depends on how good your realtor is and how familiar they are with solar.
It's probably not going to be the full cost of the system by any means.
Definitely not. Definitely not. And any salesperson that is saying that is really doing a disservice to the homeowner. Yeah. If it's not a home that you're going to own for a decent number of years, there's no point in it. If it's like if you have like a 2 or 3 year plan, just put it on your next house.
Right.
And that's one thing where, people meet with someone and they should have a professional in front of them that they can trust to give good advice. And there's just too many people trying to get a contract signed and at any cost,
Right.
So that's kind of what my goal is on my social media and whatever, is just to educate people so that they can be a little more well-informed on the subject and just knowing what kind of scams are out there.
Interesting. I like that. And we try to do that a little bit on our sales side too. We even tell people like, hey, we try to educate them. And at the end of the day, we say, whether you go with us or not, we want you to understand what goes into the roofing process on the back end, all the different moving parts, all the places that corners can be cut. That isn't, and we want you to go with a good company who at the end of the day has your best intentions at heart. And whether they go with me or another company's going to do that, I'm fine. But what I don't like going with a company, something goes wrong, something this, and then no responsibility. Ooh, it really, that hits me. So I like that you do that and you're into education. I do see A, online on Facebook, but then B, just in working with you, because I've worked with you on, quite a few solar projects and projects where we're doing the roof or whatever, and you are definitely very good about that educational process. When I'm giving you a quote, if you're not sure about something on the roof, you ask me the right questions, and that's important, is educating the homeowner, because it's a big expense if they're doing solar, doing the roof. And to make sure that they're educated and to kind of give them the value of our insight and where we come from in this profession to make sure that they're making the right decision for them, they're getting a good product, et cetera. So cool. Tell me about you. You started your own company. You were a gymnast teacher before, and then you're kind of in sales and solar, and then you go off and start your own company. So you told me a little bit about that. What has that been like? You've been doing it for a couple years. What has that been like? What's the process been like? How did you go about it? Like, just tell me a little bit about that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you jump into owning your own business, it's kind of like the Wild West. Like, there's no path. There's no cookie cutter way to do it.
Right.
There's thousands of ways to do it.
So many roads, right?
And once you realize there's no instruction manual for that, like, there's a lot of responsibility you have to take, and there's a lot of hats you have to wear, and things like that. So that's that's always a challenge, and there's lots of shifting and pivoting and trying different things. But in general, like, my first responsibility is to, the homeowners I'm serving, as well as, of course, I have to feed my family. But, again, my most important thing is to be able to sleep at night and feel good about what I'm doing and feel like I am helping the community. Otherwise, what am I doing? Wow. So yeah, that's my philosophy on owning a business. It has to be for the right reasons.
That's awesome. I love that. And then for you specifically, I admire this in you because you obviously own the company. You started this thing up, but then also you have how many kids?
I have 2. You
have 2 kids, and then you're married. Like, that's amazing. How do you figure out how to, create that business and then also balance that and then your family time and stuff like that?
Yeah, balance is a loose term. But yeah, I have a almost 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and they're homeschooled actually. So that's a whole nother level of chaos. So,
you homeschool them?
Yeah, we both do. So.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's amazing.
It's a lot.
That actually just reminded me, my parents actually, when I was growing up I started going to public school when I was like 10, 11. But up until 10, 11, my mom and dad homeschooled me also, mainly my mom. And she would get a tutor sometimes, would assist too. But my mom took a lot of that weight. And then she's also running the roofing company, the home office-based roofing company at the same time. So she's like on the call with the client, telling me, Robin, go to your room, do this, go clean up your this. Hey, Robin, get on your math homework, whatever. Well, she's on the phone with like some commercial client, and she was the balance I saw and the hard work and whatever was just amazing. So
yeah.
Anyway, that's really cool. So you're able to balance it all. That's awesome. Okay, cool. So then what are your what are your goals for like SunForge Energy in the next, I don't know, it's a couple of years? Like, where do you see it? Where do you want to get it to? What's kind of your vision?
Yeah, so I'd love to, just keep kind of expanding our reputation in the local area and get, more clients, become more well-known, because the more people I can reach with the education that I'm doing, just the better it's going to be for the area, for homeowners. And what breaks my heart is how bad of a reputation solar has.
Yeah, it's really rough.
Yeah, and there's specific problems in the industry. There's the sales related ones with the lies, misexplaining the tax credit. That happens all the time. And then there's also install related ones. So
you just reminded me a quick story I can tell, and you're familiar with the project because we were showing pictures back and forth. But there was a project in Orlando where we were referred as a roofing company by a solar company. And they brought us in to do the roof before the homeowner was going to do the solar, and they had a whole financing package worked out for this homeowner and all this. Now the problem on this is the home was really old. It was a really old home, and the trusses inside and the way it was built, there were some dips, and it wasn't the most strong home, from the attic and everything. So anyway, they hire us to come in and do the roof. So we come in and replace the roof. New shingles are on there. Then their solar engineer comes in to do a pre-inspection and a diagnosis of like, okay, good, before we're going to put the solar in. And the solar engineer goes, oh, we can't put solar on this house because the trusses are not strong enough to support the weight, because solar is really heavy. It's like almost putting like a tile roof on your house. I mean, you have to have enough support for it, right? So he looks at it, he's like, it can't support the weight of the panels, and so Miss Homeowner, you can't do it. And what that did is her financing was hinged on the solar. So now she had the roof, I think she had some foundation, some spray foam, she had all the stuff she did. And then now the solar company who led this whole thing, the solar company contracted all this out, is now kind of just messed her up a little bit, more or less. What the lady did, she was a really cool lady. She ended up just going, she got financing a different route. She got everyone paid. She was the coolest. But I look at that and I'm like, wait a minute. Your job was before all of this went on, is you should have gone in there and said, hey, it's not strong enough. It's not. And I actually personally went to this house and inspected the attic. And I kind of thought, oh yeah, the trusses aren't the strongest. But at the end of the day, it was my job to take the shingles off and put the new shingles on. It was more than strong enough for that to be permanent for that. But it wasn't for the solar weight. And I'm just like, how could that not have happened on the front end? So that was like one example. And the thing is like you said earlier, things happen in business, whatever. But here's what I really didn't like about on the solar end. The level of responsibility was so low. Like if I'm looking at the lens of roofing, if I made that kind of error, what I would do with the homeowners, I'd be like, hey, let's do the structural work and let's do it either at cost or maybe even like maybe no charge, or work something out. Like if I have to do that project and be at a no profit margin, but I do it and I don't lose that reputation with the homeowner and I take care of them, get those trusses resistered, get my solar on. Maybe I didn't make a profit on that job, but I took responsibility for my error on my back end. The solar company didn't do that. They were just basically like,
no, of course not.
You're in trouble. In fine print, page number 7 on this line, it says that, you're responsible for and I hate that when instead of taking responsibility for your process, you point back to it. So anyway, that was an experience that I had where you're talking about that education, that inspection factor, and there's so many things that go into a solar install. It's something that I saw out in the marketplace. So I really like that. That's where you're putting your attention and where you're putting, your emphasis is on that. Give me some, I know you guys are new, so I'm sure you don't have everything perfect yet, but give me some of what you're trying to do and work on in terms of that training. How are you going about training your staff, some stuff like that?
Yeah, well, first of all, being technically trained somewhat in the science of solar, I think is really important. 99% of any consultants you meet with don't have any technical training whatsoever.
Where do you go to for that? Is it like online?
Yeah, there's organizations that specialize in training people in solar, and the thing is, when it's this fleet of salespeople that are out there that are typically the ones meeting with homeowners, and the companies profit off of them, of course, selling as many projects as they can. They have a vested interest to make the process as simplified as possible for all these salespeople. And their goal is usually to get them rolling and selling as quickly as possible. So my philosophy is opposite to that. And that is partially why my team is small,
Right.
Because, I haven't necessarily figured out the process of how to scale that properly.
Yeah.
But I don't really care too much as long as I can make sure that the integrity of SunForge Energy stays top quality, and I'm really proud of the reputation that I've built in the local area in less than 2 years, So
That's awesome.
yeah, so having that there, and having that stay and continue to get better, and not lessen the value of what we do for people is my focus. So I do a lot of one-on-one training with my team, and eventually, as we grow, I'll have other managers helping to do that. But there's never a push to sell a project that we can't feel good about, and that the homeowner can't feel extremely confident in, and well informed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I really like that. And I agree with that. And I know I've made the mistake before of scaling too fast. And then you see systems fall apart because you went too fast.
Yeah.
And then you end up, and I always clean it up. That's how I am. But I like that. And I like that attitude. I would stick with that. That's really where I'm at right now too. Is like, I only want to scale as fast as I can retain the quality and the care factor that I want to put out there. If I'm starting to not put that out there in any way, that means I need to slow down and I need to look at and do something different or whatever. So I like that you have that attitude. That would be mine too. And at the end of the day, it's not a race. It's not who can go the fastest, who can get the biggest. I mean, growing is good. Like, I want to grow, you want to grow, but doing it at the right pace and making sure you maintain that and the brand, I think, is everything.
Right.
So,
well, there's a reason that so many solar companies go out of business so quickly.
Right.
And most of
roofing
them,
too. Roofing is a statistic. I think it's like 90% don't last like 3 years or whatever. I mean, there's a really bad statistic on it. Solar, I don't even want to know. It might even be worse.
Yeah. I don't even want to know the statistic. But when you get a sales guy being his own company because he's going to make more money, and then he farms out all of his jobs to these big national installers that have the worst customer service in a lot of cases.
Right.
Things like that, and that's going back to what I do with my team that's different also is that we do a lot of custom projects. Like, we basically customize every project. Nothing is cookie cutter or dumbed down to a level of the average salesperson. I bring my consultant team up to the level they need to be.
You want to bring them to like your level train and understanding and all this. I like that.
Because we deal with a lot of very unique situations where most solar companies would just say we don't do this type of project. Pergolas are a great example. We do solar pergolas, and we do everything up to large commercial scale projects, but there's a lot of complexities that can happen. There's weird electrical situations and different things where your average company would just walk away and just say, no, we can't do this, or you can't. But they would say, you can't have solar. It's so funny.
Right.
You don't qualify.
Rather than solve the problems.
Yeah.
I've seen that in roofing too. Like, there's a repair that a company doesn't want to confront or do.
Totally.
And they're like, oh no, you can't repair the roof. You have to replace it. And then I look at it and I'm just like, no, you can repair this roof. It's $1,000. I mean, it'll last this long. That's how much the whole roof will cost. But just saying that you can't, rather than being honest, saying, hey, this is like a challenge that we as a company wouldn't want to face or can't or what have you. You pointed out something a little earlier I wanted to touch on. You were talking about just like the 1099 rep jumping in, and then they're just boom, going out to this bigger company doing that. This happens in roofing a lot too, and I see it a lot. And solar is like really prevalent. And I almost call it like, at the end of the day, you're just a marketing company, which, okay, that's something if you just market and sell. That's all you market and sell, and then everything else is outsourced. But the actual value in a company, I feel like in my roofing industry too, in solar is, okay, how do I control the whole process from start to finish, what are they paying for? They're paying for the install on the roof, or in your case, the install of the solar, the electrical connections, the guys coming out on site. Like, how do I get some control factor into there? It doesn't mean that you have to do everything in-house, always and everything, but it has to mean you have to at least control it and have that as your goal. So I see that a lot, and definitely I would recommend to a consumer out there who's looking for a solar company, looking for a roofing company, find one that controls your process. You were going to say something?
Well, I don't remember what I was going to say, but regarding controlling the process, I mean, whether it's Michigan, Florida, California. Those are my locations that I have clients currently. And I mean, I have production teams in all those locations, and they, I work very closely with them. So I have a very stringent vetting process for anyone that any contractors I'm willing to work with in those locations.
Right.
And we work closely together. I know how they handle issues that come up. There's a lot of quality control that I have, whereas 99% of any consultant salesperson you might talk to in solar, they have zero quality control.
It's just kind of like write it out to this person, they go do it.
Yeah, they have zero ability to actually get a result if there's something that comes up in the process that wasn't expected or anything,
Right.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, Erin, well, hey, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, thank you.
Erin with SunForge Energy. So if somebody wants to learn more about your company, what you do, maybe they want to quote on solar, you said California, LA, this area here, and then Michigan.
Yep.
What's the best way to reach out or contact or connect with you?
So sunforgeenergy.com is our website, and we're on Facebook and Instagram and all the socials at Sunforge Energy.
Awesome. Hey, well, thank you so much for your time. I think it's amazing what you're doing. Keep rocking and rolling, and thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Thanks, Erin. That was awesome.